Hi, Amy. Thank you for joining me today.
It's great to see you, Natalie.
Yes, to kick off this conversation, I'd love to touch on your journey to your current position. I know currently you are the Chief Communications Officer for Habitat for Humanity International. You have a rich experience in communications, branding, and social impact across nonprofit, philanthropy, and the public sector. So, amazing experience. So, I'd love to hear more about it and love to hear what were some top challenges and even moments of joy throughout your journey.
My goodness. Well, I would love to say that it's been a thoughtful and strategic, well planned out journey from role to role, but it's been much more rooted in being curious about different opportunities that arose. So I've been with Habitat for just over 3 years. Before that, I was with a foundation focused on connecting education and higher education and employment better in that space for about 2.5 years. And then before that, I was at the NCAA for about 8 years. And so this time of year in March, as the tournament's getting going, it's always a little bit bittersweet to not be there. But I'm glad that I'm not busy in that way that I was for so many years. And then I was in government before that. Each of those opportunities arose through a recruiter coming my way and saying, "Hey, might this be of interest?" So I really value that communications, marketing, and brand are transferable skill sets that I've been able to take into different sectors because I love to learn in that way. So really getting to understand a new sector and a new organization and how it operates, that's how I keep my cup full as my career progresses. But as far as joys and challenges,
Mhm.
um, there have been plenty. I had a streak there where something crazy happened very early in my tenure of every job.
Mhm.
My first internship in college was at American Airlines in the communications department, and a plane crashed on my first day that I was at American Airlines. Um, then, once out of college, 9/11 was my sixth day of work in my first job, working at a PR agency, supporting aviation clients. Then I went to US Airways and they filed for bankruptcy between when I accepted the job and when I started. So, luckily, I've broken that streak at this point, but certainly lots of opportunities to kind of have dog-year experience in a shorter period of time with a lot of big kinds of challenges that the organizations that I worked for needed to navigate.
Wow, that's a great way to start each role.
Yeah, so I'm very grateful. So at Habitat, it was a
Uh-huh.
good one. About 2.5 months into my tenure with Habitat, it was announced that Mackenzie Scott had made a huge
Mhm.
unrestricted gift to Habitat. So
Mhm.
I'm hopeful that I've broken the streak now, and now it'll be good things early in my tenure going forward.
Yes, all the positivity. That's beautiful. Now you're in the social impact, the nonprofit space. So, a word that we hear a lot is authenticity, right? We hear it when we want to build trust and loyalty among audiences. So, how can social impact organizations prioritize authenticity when they think about how they're approaching their audiences? What has been your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, proximity to the people you partner with is the best way to do that. So at Habitat, our whole program strategy is to be people-centered,
Mhm.
that we don't do things to communities. We center the experiences and the perspectives and the needs of others and how we go about our work. So the fact that the programming is actually designed in that way from the very outset
Mhm.
makes it easier. But then it's really important for communicators and marketers to actually understand the programs, get out of the office, get out and embed yourself with the teams, go to project sites, and really speak to humans, the
Mhm.
people that are designing the programs and implementing the programs alongside your colleagues, and hear from them directly because that's going to give you the kind of perspective that you need. Also, for us, with the kind of content that we create, we really focus on identifying local assets, whether that is videographers or photographers, that just make it more comfortable and feel less looked upon
Mhm.
as we look to document things. And all of those things are important,
Mhm.
and being people-centered in how we go about the way that we create the content to share our stories.
I love that. At Habitat, you're leading this global team. So it's this constant balance, I think, right? Of having your overarching brand, but then also having that people-centered approach where there is the local touch. So how do you balance that? How do you balance between the big brand and then the local touch when we're talking regionally, across the US, globally, anything like that?
So I'm in a unique position that it's my responsibility to steward the brand, but
Hmm.
ultimately the brand is happening at the local level.
Hmm.
In the United States, we're in all 50 states and Puerto Rico, and then we're in 70 countries around the world as well. And people's experience with Habitat is at that local level. So it's not that it's trying to balance those two, it's trying to make sure that the way that we steward the brand honors what people's experience has been, which has been very positive, and then also invite them to understand the way that work is happening in different contexts from where they experienced it. So there's the opportunity to surprise and delight with some things that they might not know. A lot of people in the US don't know that Habitat is international. And we actually have been from the very outset. Going back to our founding almost 50 years ago, we began operating in Africa right out at the gate. So it's always been part of what we do.
Hmm.
So for me, the balance then is having the flexibility in the brand framework. And so literally our brand platform has blank spaces. It
Hmm.
is together we build blank.
Hmm.
Blank starts with a home so that you can fill in the word, literally fill in the space with what makes the most sense in the local context to bring people along, to get them engaged with the mission locally. So that flexibility is really important for us to continue to steward the brand globally.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that flexibility helps with being cohesive, right? Even if face value saying that might not make sense, but it does, it works.
You know,
Um,
and anytime you're dealing with a large organization across multiple cultures and time zones, anytime you give flexibility rather than just a checklist,
yeah.
people will take license that sometimes you need to rein back in a little bit, but we ultimately on balance the flexibility is better for us than the occasional need to course correct.
Hmm. Yes, that makes sense. So throughout your leadership, and your planning of how to best engage these audiences, whether locally, regionally, um, your decisions are making an impact, right? They're making ripple effects throughout the organization. So you're constantly making these decisions, and I'd love to hear about what is your method? What are your processes to make these very strategic, high-level decisions that impact your organization?
Ooh, well, I think the most important tool any leader has at their disposal is self-awareness
Mm.
of what are your biases on how you make decisions, how you think things through.
Mm.
Because if you're aware of them, you can invite other people in to balance them out.
Mm.
So for me, I'm a big proponent of crucial conversations training,
Mm.
where you're really focused on building mutual purpose with other people and being very saying like, here's the facts as I see them, and here's the story that I'm telling myself. What
Mhm.
am I missing? What is your perspective? So really inviting people to the problem and building mutual purpose, I think is really important. From a Clifton Strengths standpoint, formerly StrengthsFinder, input is my number one thing. I'm constantly in search of other perspectives, because all of us is way, way smarter than just me. So I seek input. I really try to build mutual purpose and really distill down what I'm trying to accomplish and then invite people to join me on figuring out the best way to get there. So that's on the kind of more emotional EQ leadership side of things. I'm also I'm a market research nerd at heart,
Okay.
and so I always want data.
Yeah.
Where there is a need to really be focused on, are we serving the audience or just an internal client? That's a real balance for any in-house communications and marketer, because people are going to want their things. So to be able to bring data to those conversations about what the audience needs is also really important, so that you're not just I talk a lot about like, let's take this from a program to a product
Hmm.
so that it's actually something that we can get funded. Because if it's the perfect program that we
Yeah.
can't fund, it helps no one. But
Yeah.
if we click it slightly and we can get it funded, then that's actually much better for everyone. So those are the kind of things that I approach, bringing the data, but then also being really clear about what I feel like success looks like and bringing other people along.
Yeah. A good balance there as well. Yeah. So, okay, so now let's talk about your vision, right? Your vision for effective communications. So, I'm somebody that I'm always looking for efficiency, but I do like to say that nothing can be perfect in this world. So while there is always room for growth, being effective is just as important. right? So for effective communications, what do you see being the biggest factor in the future of giving, the future of nonprofit?
Goodness. Clear, concise, and compelling is always
Mhm.
going to be the standard bearer. So, something I say to my team a lot is that if you can't distill it down to a sentence without semicolons, we
Mhm.
haven't thought it through. We don't understand it well enough. If you can't explain it to your grandma at a barbecue or an average 11-year-old on
Yeah.
career day, we don't understand it well enough to tell the story well. So, it's really important to be more than three talking points deep. But so I think the future is making sure that we continue to differentiate ourselves as organizations within this space. There's been a bit of a convergence in the last few years where we use a lot of the same words trying to convey our global impact across the sector. And so we did an exercise as part of our brand refresh where
Mhm.
we did kind of a peer review. And we've just gotten bad about gobbledygook, words that mean something within our sector, but don't really mean anything outside of the sector.
Yeah.
And it's not clear, it's not concise, and it's not compelling. And so we need to get out of the echo chamber and look to a lot of the best practices in for-profit marketing
Mhm.
about what is your product differentiation, what is your unique proposal, your value proposition in the market, and really looking to that and looking outside of just our social impact sector because we just like any click, we've gotten to some of our terminology and our the words that we use, and it's gotten increasingly impenetrable. So we have to be really, really determined about staying clear, concise, and compelling.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that that's really interesting how you mentioned looking at the for-profit sector, right? Because a lot of times I think a nonprofit marketer can think, "Oh, no, but I'm different." But at the end of the day, we're putting out messages that are in the same feeds, same arenas that every other message is.
And look, and it's all in the spirit of efficiency because, like, okay,
Mhm.
these acquisition strategies work best and stuff. And so we end up then converging on the same kinds of approaches, which inherently undermines their effectiveness because
Yeah.
then it becomes indistinguishable from another. So it's that we need to find the balance between the efficiency of best practices, but continuing to differentiate ourselves in how we execute them.
Yes, no, of course. Well, this has been a great conversation, Amy. Thank you for your time, and I hope to connect with you soon.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much.